The elevator passes the 14th floor and Cassia Voren steps forward. She does not touch me. She is 1 foot from me at 11 at night, and her composure, 8 years of it, the kind that flattens conference rooms, is finally, visibly, breaking. The platinum watch catches the light once. Her face is inches from mine. She says, very quietly, that she has spent 3 weeks waiting in a lobby for me at 7 in the morning and is tired of pretending the only reason is that I write good models. The elevator is rising. She has not touched me. She has not stepped back. And I am the one who has to decide what happens when those doors open. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you are watching from and subscribe. The first 3 weeks I had worked at Voren Strategic Partners, I had not met Cassia Voren. I had seen her, in meetings from the back row of conference rooms, in the lobby, at distance, in the all-hands video at orientation where she had spoken for exactly 4 minutes, without a single filler word. Everyone called her VP Voren or Cassia, depending on their level. Nobody used both first and last casually. The way she carried herself made the question of her first name feel inappropriate, like asking a surgeon about her dating life mid-procedure. My actual boss was Imani Reyes, Director of Marketing Analytics, the woman who managed the team I had been hired into. Cassia oversaw the entire strategy division, which technically included marketing analytics 3 layers down. There was no professional reason for the vice president of strategy to know who I was. Except Cassia did know who I was. I found this out in week 4, when an email arrived from C. Voren at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, with the subject line Q1 segmentation deck, page 14 footnote. The email said only, "Your assumption on churn correlation in the SMB cohort is the right read. Push it harder on the next iteration." CV. I stared at my phone in my studio apartment for a full minute. I had not presented to Cassia. The Q1 segmentation deck had gone through Imani and then to a senior director, and only then upward to the strategy division. Cassia would have had no operational reason to read footnote 14 on page 14 of a 40-page analyst-level deck. I showed the email to Imani the next morning. Imani had been at the company for 9 years and had survived 2 reorgs and the rise and fall of 3 CEOs. She read the email twice and looked at me with a long, professional expression that gave away nothing. "She does that," Imani said. "Don't make it mean more than it is." "What does it mean?" "It means she reads." Imani handed the phone back, refilled her coffee, and resumed her morning the way she resumed all her mornings, efficiently, without commentary, with the particular adaptability of a woman who had been one of 2 Black women in upper management at this firm long enough to know which observations she said out loud and which she kept under her tongue. I tried to take her advice. I tried not to make it mean more than it was. The Friday of week 6, I presented to a small working group on the 30th floor. 8 people, mostly mid-level, the kind of session where you brought your real model instead of the polished version. Cassia was not on the invite. She walked in 7 minutes late anyway, took the empty seat at the back of the room, and listened to the rest of my presentation without saying a word or making a note. When I finished, she asked 2 questions. Both questions identified the exact 2 weaknesses in my model that I myself was aware of, but had decided to hide behind softer language. The questions were not hostile. They were surgical. They were the kind of questions you cannot ask unless you have read the model thoroughly enough to know where its weight is bearing wrong. I answered both questions honestly, which was harder than it should have been, because Cassia Voren's full attention turned in your direction was a physical sensation. It was like a small cold spotlight that did not move until it was satisfied. The other people in the room kept their faces very still. I had the dim sense that they were taking notes about how I was handling it. After the meeting, Cassia stopped at the door. "Solano." Yes? The model is good. Tighten the two assumptions before the next presentation. She walked out. I stood in the conference room for a moment and noticed my own pulse. It was doing something faster than the situation called for. I told myself it was the standard reaction. Cassia Vorn was the kind of executive whose attention pinned you to a wall regardless of who you were. Everyone reacted to it. The reaction did not mean anything. I continued telling myself this for the next 7 weeks, during which Cassia's name appeared 3 more times in my professional life. Once as a CC on a strategy memo where my name appeared as one of 3 contributors. Once in a hallway pass at the elevator bank where she had nodded at me without breaking stride, and somehow that small nod had felt like a marked card. And once in a Friday evening message at 6:53 that said only, "Saw your revised SMB cohort work. Better. CV." The Wednesday in February that started everything, I had been working a client presentation that ran until almost 7. I had been the last person leaving the 32nd floor conference room, gathering my laptop and my notes, when the door opened and Cassia walked in to pick up a folder she had apparently left on the credenza earlier in the day. We were alone for the first time. She crossed to the credenza, retrieved the folder, and turned to leave. She was in a charcoal suit with the platinum watch on her right wrist that I had now seen close enough to identify as a Cartier tank, the kind of object that a person does not buy herself but is given by someone who knew exactly what to give. I had been cataloging these details for 3 months without knowing I was doing it. She paused at the door. Long day. Long week, I said. But the client signed. I saw the contract this morning. Imani sent it up? Imani sent it up. A short silence. She was holding the folder, but she had not yet left. The 2-foot distance between us in the conference room doorway felt very specifically 2 feet. Measurable, present. The kind of distance a person becomes aware of only when she has stopped pretending not to be aware of it. "Have a good night," Cassia said. And I, who was tired, who was not thinking, who was 30 seconds from the elevator and the train and my bed, said it without considering it. "See you tomorrow." I said it the way you say it to anyone, the way you say it to a person at the coffee cart, to a security guard, to a colleague whose name you do not yet know, but whom you will probably see again. A throwaway phrase, an ordinary courtesy. Cassia looked at me for 1/2 second too long. Then she said, "Tomorrow," and walked out. I took the elevator down, got on the train, went home. I did not think about it again. The next morning, at 7:15, Cassia was standing in the lobby by the coffee cart when I walked in. I was 18 minutes earlier than usual because my train had been ahead of schedule, which was something my train almost never was. There was no one in the lobby except Cassia and the security desk and the woman behind the coffee cart who was setting up for the morning rush. Cassia was holding an espresso. She was watching the door. She saw me. She did not look surprised. "Good morning," she said, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world for the vice president of strategy to be standing in the lobby at 7:15, hands wrapped around a small white cup, watching the revolving door. "Good morning," I said. She walked toward the elevator. I walked toward the elevator. We got on together. She pressed 32. I pressed 28. She stepped back and looked at the floor indicator. We rode in complete silence to 28. "Have a good day, Solano," she said as the doors opened. "You too," I said. The doors closed. She rode the rest of the way up alone. I stood in the 28th floor hallway for a moment before walking to my desk. The next morning, Friday, she was in the lobby again. This time at 7:12. This time I was 11 minutes earlier than my usual arrival. Same coffee, same place by the cart, same posture, watching the door, same good morning Solano, same elevator ride, same complete silence, same have a good day. I got off at 28 and walked to my desk and sat down, and did not open my laptop for 40 seconds. I just sat there. Devi found me at the coffee station 40 minutes later. Devi Park was a senior analyst, 2 years older than me, the only person on our floor who had openly befriended me in my first month. You look like you saw something, she said. I am fine, I said. You are not fine. You are doing the face. What face? The face you do when you are trying to be normal about something not normal. I poured my coffee. I did not look at her. Cassia Voren has been in the lobby at 7-something every morning this week, I said. Devi tilted her head. So I have been in the lobby at 7-something every morning this week. A small silence. Devi added cream to her cup with extreme precision. How many mornings? She asked. 3. Coincidence? I said, see you tomorrow to her on Wednesday night. Devi set her cup down. Mira, I know. You know? I know what it could be. I am also aware that I might be making it mean more than it is. Devi looked at me for a long moment. Then she did a thing I had not seen her do before. She looked over her shoulder, scanned the floor, leaned a little closer. Listen, she said. I have worked here for 4 years. I have watched Cassia Voren walk through this lobby exactly never before. Not once. Not for fire drills. Not for the holiday breakfast. Not for the time the elevators went down and the rest of us were stranded for 90 minutes. She uses the executive entrance on Park. She always has. I felt something settle in my chest in the wrong way. So, Devi said, 3 is not a coincidence. What do I do? I am not the right person to ask, Devi said. I am very good at spreadsheets. I am very bad at the question of what to do when a 40-year-old woman who could buy and sell our entire division decides to start showing up in lobbies. She is 39, I said. Devi looked at me. I read it on the company bio page, I said. When I was new. That is the part of this conversation, Devi said, that I would like to come back to later. The 4th morning, Monday, Cassia was in the lobby at 7:14. Same espresso, same posture, same waiting position. I had spent the weekend deciding what I was going to do. I had decided not to do anything dramatic. I had decided not to make a thing of it. I had decided I was going to walk in, say good morning, get on the elevator with her, and ride to my floor exactly the way I had done the 3 previous mornings. I did all of those things. Then, just before the elevator doors opened on 28, I did one additional thing. I said quietly, "You have been here every morning this week." The doors opened on 28. Cassia did not move. She said, "I know." The doors started to close. Cassia put her hand against the door rail. They opened again. She said, "I will see you tomorrow, Solano." I stepped out. The doors closed. The elevator rose. I stood in the 28th floor hallway with my coffee in my hand and my brain doing something it had not done in a professional environment in my entire career. I did not move for almost a full minute. The pattern continued for the rest of the week. It continued through the next week. It continued, with one variation, into the week after that. The variation was that on Wednesday of the 3rd week, Cassia arrived at 7:20 instead of her usual 7:12 to 7:15, and when I walked in, she was already by the elevator, and her face, only for the half second before she saw me, was doing something I had never seen it do. It was doing concern. It was the face of a person who had been waiting and had begun to think that the person she was waiting for was not coming. Then she saw me. The face went back to the composed neutral she wore the way other people wore clothes. "The train," I said. "I assumed," she said. We got on the elevator. Halfway up, in the middle of the silence that we had now established as the form our mornings took, she said something I had not expected. "You are working on the Halcyon brief." It was not a question. The Halcyon account was the biggest new business win the firm had landed in 2 years, and the analytics work was being run out of Imani's team. I had been pulled onto the project 3 days earlier as one of 4 supporting analysts. The work had not yet hit anyone's radar at the strategy division level. "Yes," I said. "The model you are running on retention segmentation is interesting," she said. "There is a third dimension you have not introduced yet. Touchpoint frequency in the first 30 days. Consider it." The doors opened on 28. I considered it that morning at my desk. The touchpoint frequency variable, when I added it to the model, immediately improved the R-squared by 11% and answered a question that the senior team had been circling without naming. It was the kind of insight that did not come from someone glancing at a deck. It came from a person who had sat with the problem and thought about it specifically. I went to Imani's office at lunch. "Did Cassia look at the Halcyon model?" I asked. Imani looked up from her sandwich. She regarded me for a long, measured moment. "Why do you ask?" "She gave me a suggestion this morning. The touchpoint variable. It worked." Imani set the sandwich down. "She has not been on the Halcyon distribution list," Imani said. "I know. The model is on the shared drive. She could pull it. She has access." "I know." Imani picked up her sandwich again and took a careful bite. She chewed slowly. She swallowed. "Mira," she said. "Yes. I am going to ask you a question. You do not have to answer it. But I am going to ask it because it is becoming relevant to my management of this team, and I would like to be ahead of it rather than behind it. Okay, is something happening between you and Cassia Vorin?" I felt my face do something that I could not control in time. "Nothing has happened," I said. Imani nodded slowly. "That is what I thought," she said. "Which is, in a way, more complicated than the other answer would have been." I did not know what to say to that. Imani leaned back in her chair. She looked at me with the particular kindness of a woman who had been in this industry long enough to have seen many specific versions of this conversation. "I am going to tell you 2 things," she said. "First, Cassia is a person of unusual professional discipline. She does not act outside structure. Whatever is happening, she is managing it inside the structure she has, which is a structure that does not include doing anything that could affect your career here. Trust that part of her. It is real." "Okay." "Second, you are 3 months into your first big firm role. You have a long professional life ahead of you. Do not, under any circumstance, let yourself be put in a position where the answer to anything about your career is shaped by anyone's feelings, including your own. You are the one with the most to lose in this configuration." "I am the one with the most to lose," I repeated. "You are the one with the least power," she said. "Those are the same thing." I nodded. Imani looked tired in the way people look tired when they have spent a long time protecting other people from things they themselves had not been protected from. "Go," she said. "The model is good. Push the touchpoint variable into the next iteration. Do not tell anyone where the suggestion came from." I went. The next morning, Cassia was in the lobby at 7-Eleven, and I was in the lobby at 7-Eleven, and we got on the elevator together and rode in silence, and she said, "Have a good day, Solano at 28. And I said, "You too," and the doors closed and the world continued. 3 days later, the Halcyon project pulled in a senior consultant from one of our partner firms. Her name was Lane Whitcomb. She was 41 years old, came in with a reputation built across 6 years at a boutique strategy house in Chicago, and was joining us on a co-lead basis. She was tall. She had the kind of voice that filled rooms without being raised. She also, within an hour of arriving in our offices, identified me as the analyst whose model she wanted to work with most closely. "I want Solano on my working group," she said in the first kickoff meeting. She said it looking at me, not at Imani, in a way that was not inappropriate exactly, but was also not the way people usually requested analyst time. Imani said, "Solano is one of 4 supporting analysts on this engagement. I am happy to have her contribute to your working group as her capacity allows." Lane smiled. She had a good smile. She used it well. "Excellent," she said. I did not look at Cassia, who was in the meeting because Lane was a partner firm presence, and the strategy division wanted to set the right tone of welcome. I did not look at her at the start of the meeting, and I did not look at her when Lane requested me by name, and I did not look at her when the meeting ended. I did not look at Cassia because I could feel her not looking at me. The not looking had a temperature to it. After the meeting, I went back to my desk. Devi rolled her chair over within 4 minutes. "That was something," Devi said. "What was something?" "You did not see Cassia's face when Lane Whitcomb said your name like that." "I did not see Cassia's face, no." "You should have seen Cassia's face. What was it doing?" "It was not doing anything. That was the something." "Lane is being normally collaborative," I said. "Senior consultants pick the analysts they want to work with." "Lane Whitcomb," Devi said, "has just walked into our office in a suit that cost more than my rent, and has, in her first 60 minutes here, identified the youngest, most attractive analyst on the engagement and requested her time directly. Lane Whitcomb is being a number of things. Normally, collaborative is not in the top 5. She is doing her job," I said. Devi looked at me with the patient affection of a person watching a friend insist that a clearly slanted floor is level. "Okay," she said. She rolled her chair back. That afternoon at 4:50, I got a Slack message from Cassia. It said, "My office when you have a moment. Today, preferred." I went up to the 32nd floor at 5:15. After I had finished a model run I did not want to leave hanging. Her assistant, an unflappable woman named Inez, who had been with Cassia for 6 years and treated her with a mixture of fondness and brisk management, told me to go in. Cassia was at her desk. Her office was large but spare. A window wall that looked out toward the river. A bookshelf with actual books, not display objects. The Cartier on the right wrist. The hair pinned up, which I had now learned was the version of Cassia that was making the most effort. She looked up. She gestured to one of the 2 chairs across from her desk. I sat. "How is the Halcyon engagement?" she asked. "The engagement is good. The model is moving. Lane has good instincts on the qualitative side." "Lane has good instincts." A small pause. Her face did not change. Her jaw did. 1 millimeter. "How do you find working with her?" she asked. "It has been 1 day," I said. "How do you find working with her?" she said again. I looked at her. "I find her competent and professional," I said carefully. "I find her interest in the analytics work to be substantive. I have no concerns." Cassia held my gaze. "If you ever have concerns," she said, "you can raise them with Imani. Or with me." "What kind of concerns are you imagining I might have?" "The kind," Cassia said, "that an analyst 3 months into her first role might not feel she has the standing to raise on her own." I sat very still. "Are you asking me about Lane in a professional capacity?" I said. "Or are you asking me about Lane for another reason?" The silence in the room rearranged itself. Cassia looked down at her desk. Her hand went to a pen, picked it up, set it down. The small motion of a person reaching for an object when she had not been able to reach for the right words. "I am asking you," she said, "in the only capacity I am allowed to ask you anything." I felt the room contract. The window, the bookshelf, the 2 feet of space between her desk and my chair. "That," I said, "is not a full answer." "I know." 2 words, smaller than I had ever heard her voice be, 2 words I had been waiting on for 3 weeks of lobby mornings. She looked back up at me. "The Halcyon engagement is important to the firm," she said. The team supporting it should feel professionally protected. That is the entirety of what I am able to say to you in this office. What can you say to me not in this office? I asked. Her jaw flexed. Her shoulders did not move. That, she said, is not a question I am going to answer right now. When are you going to answer it? When I have decided what the responsible answer is. I stood up. You have been waiting in the lobby for me for 3 weeks, I said. I have. Why? She looked at me. Her face was, for 1 second, the most unguarded I had ever seen it. There was nothing dramatic in it. Just a woman, sitting at a desk in a charcoal suit, looking at another woman across 2 feet of office air, having spent 3 weeks waiting in a lobby she had no professional reason to enter, knowing that the only honest answer to the question, why, was an answer she had built her entire career around not giving. She said, I have not yet decided. I waited. She said, I will tell you when I have. Okay, I said. I went to the door. Solano, she said. I turned. Be careful with Lane Whitcomb, she said. I am not in any danger from Lane Whitcomb. I know, she said, but I am asking you to be careful anyway. Why? She looked at me. The composure was working hard. I could see the work at the edges. Because, she said, I do not have the right to ask you to be. And I am asking you anyway. I held her gaze. Have a good night, Cassia, I said. I had never used her first name in this building. Something moved across her face. Have a good night, Mira, she said. She had never used my first name. Not in any meeting, not in any email. Not in any of the 15 mornings she had said have a good day. Solano in an elevator she had no reason to be in. I walked out. I rode the elevator down 28 floors. I sat on a bench in the lobby for 10 minutes before I could go to the train. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my professional life. Lane Whitcomb continued to be Lane Whitcomb. She did the things people in her position do when they are interested in a younger colleague without crossing any line they could be held to. She invited me to working coffees. She copied me on emails I did not need to be copied on. She stood slightly closer to me at the whiteboard than the work required. She used my first name. I held the line. I always held the line. Cassia, for her part, did not say anything else to me about Lane. She did not have to. The temperature of the not saying said everything that the saying would have said. She was in the lobby every morning at 7-something. We rode the elevator together every morning. She said, have a good day, Solano, every morning. I matched her register. I called her Cassia in my head, and VP Vorin in any room where anyone could hear, and nothing at all in the elevator, because the elevator did not require words. The Halcyon final presentation was scheduled for a Thursday, at the off-site the firm hosted every year at a hotel in the city. A one-night thing, dinner and presentations, and the kind of strategically casual networking that the firm liked to do once a year to make the staff feel valued before sending us back to our actual jobs. I was presenting a 15-minute segment of the model work. It was the biggest exposure I had had in my 3 months at the firm. Imani had walked me through the deck twice and told me that the thing to do was to present the work the way I would present it to Imani, which was to say, with full conviction in the analysis and zero performance of confidence I did not feel. The presentation went well. The dinner that followed went less well. Lane Whitcomb sat next to me at dinner. She had arranged it. The seating chart had not assigned us together, and she had quietly swapped name cards before anyone sat down. I noticed because I noticed everything in that room. Cassia was at a table 2 over, with the partners and the senior directors. She did not look at our table. She did not have to. Lane was warm. Lane was funny. Lane talked to me about the work and then talked to me about other things. Lane, after the second glass of wine that I had nursed for 40 minutes, and she had refilled 3 times, put her hand on my forearm to make a point and left it there 1 beat too long. I withdrew my arm with what I hoped was a gracious smile. Lane took the cue. She did not push. She was, in this respect as in all the others, professional. But across the room, at the partners' table, Cassia Vaughan had been looking at the exact wrong moment. She had been looking the way she looked at things she was tracking. I did not see her face. I felt the absence of her not looking the way I had been feeling everything she did not say for 3 weeks. After dinner, the partners moved to the bar, and the rest of us were politely encouraged to do whatever we wanted with the evening. Most of the analysts went up the street to a wine bar Devi had picked. Lane invited me to stay for a drink at the hotel bar with her and 2 senior consultants. I declined as gracefully as I could and went up the street with Devi. We had 1 drink. Devi watched me carefully. She did not say anything about Lane, and she did not say anything about Cassia. She said only, "You did very well in the presentation. I am proud of you." "Thank you," I said. We walked back to the hotel together. It was 11. The lobby was mostly empty. Devi went up to her room. I went to the elevator alone because my room was on the same floor as a cluster of partner suites, and I wanted no part of any nightcap conversations. The elevator doors opened. Cassia was inside. She was alone. She was leaning against the back wall of the elevator with her arms crossed and her jacket slightly looser at the shoulders than it had been at dinner, and her hair, I noticed for the first time in 3 weeks, partially down. 2 strands had come loose. She had not fixed them. I got on the elevator. The doors closed. She pressed nothing. Her floor was already pressed. I pressed 18. She watched the indicator light up. "What floor are you on?" I asked. 22. "Okay." The elevator started to move. "I saw you with her at dinner," Cassia said. I sat the words down between us in the elevator and let them be there for a second before I responded. She put her hand on my arm. I moved it. That was the full extent of what happened. "I know." "How do you know?" "I was watching." The elevator passed the 4th floor. "I am aware," Cassia said, "that I am not allowed to be having this conversation with you. You are having it anyway." "I am." "Why?" The elevator passed the 8th floor. She did not answer right away. She was looking at the floor indicator. Her jaw was working in the small way that I had learned, over 3 months, was her tell. The one she used when she was deciding between the professional version of a sentence and the honest one. "Because," she said, "I have spent 3 weeks standing in a lobby for you at 7 in the morning. And I have spent 2 weeks watching a woman who is good at her job and not good for you put her hand on your arm at meetings. And tonight I sat at a partner's table while she sat next to you at dinner. And I have decided, somewhere between the 2nd course and the elevator, that I am tired of pretending the only reason I am paying attention is that you write good models." The elevator passed the 14th floor. I felt the floor of the elevator and the wall behind my back, and the specific dim hush of an elevator at 11 at night in a hotel that was mostly already asleep. I felt the 2 feet of space between us that had been 2 feet for 3 weeks, in lobbies and elevators and conference rooms and an office on the 32nd floor. I felt them collapse to 1 foot because she had stepped forward, because she had finally taken the 1 step that none of the structures she lived inside had allowed her to take. She did not touch me. She stood 1 foot from me in an elevator that was rising past the 16th floor and said nothing at all. Her face was inches from mine. All of that composure, all of that restraint. The platinum watch on the right wrist catching the elevator light once. The elevator passed the 17th floor. "I want you to know," she said, very quietly, "that I am going to step back before this elevator opens on 18. And I am going to ride up to 22. And tomorrow morning I am going to be in the lobby at 7:12. And we are going to have to decide, together, what we are going to do with all of this. Because I cannot keep being the only one carrying it." The elevator slowed. She stepped back. The 2 feet returned. The doors opened on 18. She did not move. She did not look at me. She looked at the floor indicator. I stepped off the elevator. "Have a good night, Cassia," I said, because it was the only thing I could say, because the other thing I could have said would have required the rest of my life to say it correctly, and we were not yet in the room where that sentence belonged. She said, "Have a good night, Mira." The doors closed. I stood in the hotel hallway with my key card in my hand and my pulse doing something expensive, and I understood for the first time in any complete way what it was that I had walked into when I had said "see you tomorrow" on a Wednesday night in February, and meant nothing by it at all. I walked to my room. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. I did not turn on the television. I did not open my laptop. I did not do anything for a long time. At 1 in the morning, I texted Devi. "I need to tell you something tomorrow." Devi wrote back immediately because Devi never slept at offsites. "Are you safe?" "I am safe." "Are you okay?" "I do not know." "Okay." "Breakfast at 7. The good place across the street, not the hotel." "Okay." I lay on my back on the hotel bed for a long time without sleeping. I thought about Cassia in the elevator. I thought about the 1 step forward. I thought about the words "I cannot keep being the only one carrying it." I thought about what it meant to be asked to carry something with someone, and what it would cost both of us to say yes, and what it would cost both of us, and which of us it would cost more, to say no. At 3, I finally fell asleep. At 6:15, my alarm went off. At 7, I was sitting across from Devi at the good place across the street, and Devi was looking at me with the patient seriousness of a person who had already decided not to make me say anything I did not want to say. I said, "She stepped forward in the elevator last night." Devi closed her eyes for 1 second. "Okay," she said. "She did not touch me." She stepped back before the doors opened, but she stepped forward, and she said she could not keep being the only one carrying it. Devi opened her eyes. She picked up her coffee. She looked at me over the rim of it for a long moment. "Mira," she said, "I am going to say one thing, and then we are going to eat breakfast and go to the second day of this offsite and act like professional human beings. Okay, you are going to have to decide what you want, not what is convenient, not what is professional, not what is safe, what you want. Because she has just told you she is at the end of what she can carry alone, and you are the only person who can answer the question of whether she carries any of it with company." "I know," I said. "You also have to decide it knowing that whatever you choose, the configuration of this is going to change. There is no version where the 2 of you ride the elevator in silence forever now. That door is closed. You are going to have to walk through one of the other doors." "I know." Devi nodded. Then she said, "Eat your eggs." I ate my eggs. We went to the second day of the offsite. I sat in the back row of 3 different sessions and tried to take notes, and could not have told you, at the end of any of them, what the sessions had been about. At lunch, I went down to the hotel lobby to call my mother because my mother was the only person whose voice I needed to hear, and I had no intention of telling her anything, but I knew that her voice would do the thing her voice always did, which was to make my own face come back to me in the mirror. Cassia was in the lobby. She was standing by the front desk with her phone to her ear, in a different suit than yesterday, hair fully up, the platinum watch catching the noon light. She saw me. She raised 1 finger, the universal gesture for 1 moment. She finished her call. She put the phone away. She walked toward me, slowly, the way she walked toward everything. She stopped 2 feet away. "Tonight," she said, "after the closing dinner. My suite. Room 2206. We are going to have a conversation." I looked at her. "Okay," I said. She nodded once. Then she turned and walked back to the front desk and resumed whatever she had been doing before I had walked into the lobby, as if she had not just said the most consequential sentence she had ever said to me in 3 months of working in the same building. I went back to the second day of the offsite. I sat in the back row of one more session. I did not hear a word of it. The afternoon sessions ended at 4. The closing dinner was at 7. I had 3 hours. I went to my hotel room. I closed the door. I sat on the bed. I tried, briefly, to do something productive with the time, and discovered that the part of my brain that did productive things was offline. I did the only thing I could think of, which was to take a long shower with the water hotter than I usually liked it, and then put on the dress I had not worn the night before, a dark green one that Devi had told me I should bring, even though I had thought I would not bother, and do my makeup with the same precision I brought to everything, because precision was the only thing keeping me on my feet. At 6:50, I went down to the lobby for the dinner. Cassia was already there, talking with 2 of the partners. She was in black tonight, the Cartier on the right wrist, the hair fully pinned. Her eyes flicked toward me once when I came off the elevator, registered the dress, and went back to the partner she was speaking with as though nothing had happened. I felt the look the way you feel a hand on the small of your back. Devi found me before I had to figure out where to stand. "You look good," she said. "You look like a person who is about to do something difficult and has decided to look good doing it." "That is exactly the brief," I said. She did not ask. I did not tell her. We went into the dinner together. I was seated at a table of mid-level managers and senior analysts. Cassia was at the partners' table, 6 tables away, with her back mostly to the room, in the careful way that Cassia chose her angles. Lane Whitcomb was seated at a third table, with the partner firm contingent, where Imani had quietly arranged for her to be. I was grateful for it. The dinner was 3 courses and a series of brief speeches. I ate what I could. I did not look at the partners' table because looking at the partners' table would have been visible. At 9:40, the dinner formally ended. The partners moved to the bar. The rest of us were released. Some people went up to the wine bar Devi had picked the night before. Some people went to bed. Lane caught my eye across the room and raised her glass in a small, gracious gesture. I returned the gesture. Lane went with the partner firm group. Devi walked me to the elevator. "I will not ask," she said. "Thank you. But if you need anything, at any hour, you text me, even if it is just to tell me you are in your own bed and you would like to go to sleep but you cannot." "I will," I said. She squeezed my hand once. She got off on her floor. I rode up to 22. I stood outside a room 2206 for a moment that was longer than a moment. The hallway was empty. The carpet was that specific hotel beige that exists nowhere else. The door was the same as every other door on the floor, and was also, for the duration of my standing in front of it, the only door in the world. I knocked. She opened it. She was not in the black dress anymore. She was in dark pants and a cream sweater that I had never seen her wear, and that I was certain she did not wear in any context that included other employees of the firm. Her hair was down, all the way down. It fell to her collarbone in a way that I had not realized, in all my cataloging of her, was the length of it. She looked at me for one long moment. "Come in," she said. I came in. The suite was the size of an apartment. There was a sitting area with a couch and 2 armchairs and a low table. There was a window wall with a view of the river and the city beyond, lit in the particular way cities are lit at 10 in the evening. She had set out water. 2 glasses. She had decided that water was the correct choice for the conversation we were going to have. I noted the decision and was grateful for it. "Sit," she said. I sat in one of the armchairs. She sat at the end of the couch closest to me. She did not sit beside me. The distance was deliberate. The distance was, I understood, an act of respect. She had thought about every variable of this room and was offering me the version of the conversation that did not put any physical pressure on me at all. "I want you to know," she said, "that nothing has to happen here tonight except a conversation. I am not going to ask you for anything. You can leave any time. If you decide at any point in the next 10 minutes or the next 2 hours that you would like to be back in your own room, you say so, and I will walk you to the elevator and we will continue this another time or not at all." "I understand. I want you to also know," she said, "that I am going to tell you the truth. The full version. Not because I am trying to extract anything from you, because I owe you the actual answer to the question, why have I been standing in the lobby for 3 weeks? And you are not going to get the answer to that question if I keep using the language I have been using." "Okay," I said. She picked up her water. She did not drink it. She set it back down. "I read your application package," she said. "When you were hired. Imani sent it up as a formality. I read it because I read everything that touches my division, and 3 months before you started, I read your 3 writing samples and your transcripts and the case study you submitted on retention modeling, and I thought, this is one of the better candidates we have hired into analytics in 2 years. That was the entirety of what I thought. Okay, the first time I saw you was at the new hire orientation. You sat in the second row. You asked one question, which was a question about how the firm structured the relationship between strategy and execution, and the question was better than the question one of our managing directors had asked at the previous quarter's all-hands. I noticed the question. I noticed you." She paused. "I want to be clear," she said, "that what I noticed at orientation was a smart new analyst whose question I respected. Nothing else." "Okay, the Q1 segmentation deck was in week 3. Footnote 14 was the place where the analysis was most original and least supported, and I sent you the note about it because that is the kind of note I send when I see good work being underclaimed. I remember. I sent the note at 11:47 at night," she said, "because I had been at home, in my apartment, with the deck open on my laptop on a Tuesday night. And I had been reading footnote 14 for the second time. That is information. That is the first piece of information you need to have. There is no professional reason for a vice president to be reading an analyst-level footnote a second time at 11:47 on a Tuesday night." I held very still. "The Friday of week 6, she said, was when I knew." "The working group," I said. "With the 2 questions. The 2 questions," she said. "The questions were professional. The fact that I walked into that meeting unannounced was not. I had pulled the invite from Imani's calendar and seen that you were presenting and decided that I wanted to hear you present, and I had constructed a thin justification involving the model's relevance to a strategy initiative I was not in fact running. I lied to myself about why I was in that room. The questions, once I was in the room, were genuine. The being in the room at all was not. The hallway pass at the elevator, I said. I had also constructed that. The Slack message at 6:53 on a Friday. That one I do not know how to defend, she said. That one was me, in my office on a Friday evening, having checked your work for the 3rd time that week, allowing myself to send a message because the message was professionally defensible, and I had decided to ignore the question of whether it was professionally necessary. Okay, the Wednesday in February, she said. The conference room, the folder. The folder was real? The folder was real, she said. I had left it there earlier. But I had left it there at 4. I came back for it at 6:58, after I had checked the conference room schedule, because I knew your client presentation had been on the books until 7. I exhaled slowly. You set up the conference room moment, I said. I did not set it up. I knew the variables. I positioned myself inside them. There is a difference, and I want you to know I am aware of which side of the difference I was on. When I said, See you tomorrow, I said. She looked at her hands. She looked at the water. She looked back at me. When you said see you tomorrow, she said, I went home. I sat in my apartment. I did not sleep. At 5 in the morning, I got up and dressed and went to the office. And I went to the lobby instead of the executive entrance, and I waited for you. And when you walked in, I had every intention of acting as though it were a coincidence. And I did. And I have continued doing so for 3 weeks. And the act has gotten harder every morning instead of easier, which is not what I had expected. What did you expect? I expected, she said, that I would stand in the lobby once or twice and the strangeness of it would shock me back into proportion. That I would feel ridiculous. That my professional self-image would reassert itself. That is not what happened. What happened was that you said good morning to me with the same small, unself-conscious kindness every morning, and I started looking forward to it. And somewhere in the second week, I understood that I was not going to be the one to stop. I held my water glass without drinking from it. What about Lane? I said. She looked at the window for a long moment. Lane, she said. Lane is a competent and ambitious consultant who has correctly identified that you are talented and incorrectly identified that you might be available to her in some capacity beyond professional. Lane is not a danger to you. I told you to be careful with her, because the act of watching her put her hand on your forearm at our daily working sessions was making me less stable than I had been in 8 years, and I needed you to understand that the not stability was not your problem to solve, but I could not stop myself from at least asking you to be aware of it. You were jealous, I said. The word lay in the room. Yes, she said. I had never heard her use that word about herself. I would not have known before tonight whether the word had any operational meaning in her vocabulary. Hearing her use it now was like watching a building shift on its foundation in some small, structural way that you would not have believed possible if you had not seen it happen. I sat with the word. Tonight, she said, I sat at the partners' table and watched her sit next to you at dinner. I had not arranged the seating. I would not have arranged the seating, even if I had been asked. I have spent 8 years not arranging seating, but I sat at the partners' table tonight and I watched her sit next to you, and I understood that the version of me that has been managing the situation for 3 weeks is not a version I can sustain, and I decided in the middle of the second course that I was going to ask you up to this room and tell you the truth. Why? I said. She looked at me. Because, she said, you have been carrying half of this without my asking you to carry it, and without my acknowledging that you were carrying it, and that is the version of me I cannot continue to be. If you are going to carry any of this, you should at least know what you are carrying, and you should get to decide whether you want to. I looked at her in the cream sweater with her hair down, and her watch on the wrong wrist, and the precision of every word she had just spoken, and I understood that what she had just done was the most exposed she had been in a professional relationship in years. The elevator last night, I said. The elevator last night I should not have done. But you did. But I did. You stepped forward. I stepped forward. Why did you step back? She looked at me for a long moment. Because, she said, I am still your superior in the organizational hierarchy of a firm that employs both of us, and I have been making decisions that have affected your access to senior leadership and your visibility on this engagement and your professional trajectory for 3 months without disclosing any conflict. And there is no honest version of me touching you in an elevator while all of those things are also true. I felt my throat tighten in a way I had not been expecting. So why? I said. Why bring me up here? Because the conversation is not the same thing as the touch, she said. The conversation is something I can give you tonight without making your career a hostage to my feelings. A long silence opened in the suite. What are you going to do? I asked. She breathed out slowly. She had been waiting for the question. Tomorrow morning, she said, I am going to call Annette Liu. She is our Chief Human Resources Officer. I have known her for 11 years. I am going to tell her that I have been managing an undisclosed conflict of interest that has affected at least 3 operational decisions I have made about an analyst in my division. I am going to provide the specific decisions. I am going to recuse myself from any further involvement with the marketing analytics team. You will lose the oversight of marketing analytics. I will. The oversight will move to Daria Holm, who has been ready for it for 2 years, and who Annette will install within the week. What happens to you? There will be a review. The review will be brief, because I am the one initiating it, and because I am offering accountability rather than requiring it to be extracted. There will likely be a formal reprimand placed in my file. I will likely be asked to step out of any direct decision-making role involving you for the remainder of your time at this firm or the remainder of my time at this firm, whichever is longer. You could be fired, I said. I will not be fired, she said. I am disclosing voluntarily. I am offering remediation. That is the structure for this situation, and the structure will hold. But it does not matter, in the sense that I would rather be fired than continue to be the person I have been for the past 3 months. You are going to lose the Halcyon engagement, I said. I will not be involved in the Halcyon engagement after tomorrow morning, she said. The team is capable. Daria will provide oversight. The work is good. The work is yours. I am removing myself from the chain that connects my feelings to your performance reviews, and that is the only thing I should have done in October when this started. October, I said. October. I held that. October was 5 months ago. October was the 2nd week of my employment. You have been carrying this for 5 months, I said. I have. Without telling me. Without telling you. Why are you telling me now? Because, she said, the disclosure to Annette is the institutional accounting. You deserve the personal one. You deserve to know what was happening before you read about my recusal in a 1-line email from Human Resources at 9 in the morning. I looked at her. The composure had not broken. The composure was, in fact, what she had been using to deliver every word of the past 40 minutes. The precision of someone who had decided to take responsibility for something difficult and had organized herself around the responsibility rather than around her own protection. I wanted to cross the room. I did not cross the room. Cassia, I said. She looked at me. I want you to do all of those things, I said. Call Annette, recuse yourself, take the reprimand, step out of the chain, all of it. I will. I want you to do all of those things because they are right, I said. Not because I am asking for them. I understand. But I also want you to know, I said, that I am sitting in this chair right now, and I have not yet decided whether I am going to leave this room in 10 minutes or stay in this room for an hour. She held very still. Whichever I decide, I said, I want it to be a decision I am making on my own behalf, and not a decision I am making because you have just laid out a plan in which you are about to lose professional standing on my account, and I feel that I owe you something in return. You owe me nothing, she said immediately. I know. She held my eyes. I have been waiting in a lobby for 3 weeks, she said. I am not in any hurry. Take your time. I sat with it for a long moment. The thing I noticed was that I was not, in any part of me, surprised by what she had told me. The information was new, but the shape of it was not. Some part of me had known the shape for weeks. The other thing I noticed was that the version of her sitting on the couch in a cream sweater with her hair down was not, in fact, a different woman from the version of her that walked into conference rooms in charcoal suits. She was the same woman. The difference was that this version of her had decided to stop hiding which decisions she was making and why. I had spent my entire adult life cataloging the moments when people decided to stop hiding. It was the rarest thing in any environment I had ever worked in. It was the thing I valued most in the few people who had ever done it in my presence. I stood up. She did not move. She watched me stand. I walked to the couch. I sat down at the other end of it, not beside her, but on the same piece of furniture. I sat with my legs folded under me. I looked at her. "This is not me staying," I said. "This is me deciding I am not ready to leave yet." "Okay. I want you to tell me," I said, "what you have been doing in the apartment." "What apartment?" "Your apartment. The one where you were reading footnote 14 at 11:47 on a Tuesday night." A small thing happened at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile. The structure of a smile suppressed. "Mostly I was reading the deck," she said. "What else?" "Drinking tea. I do not drink coffee at night." "What kind of tea?" "Pure." "Of course it is pure." The corner of her mouth moved again. "What else?" I said. "Listening to a piano recording I have been listening to for 15 years. "Which one?" "A Brahms intermezzo. Op. 118, number 2. "I do not know it," I said. "I will play it for you sometime." The sentence sat between us and then, very quietly, made the room a different room. "I will play it for you sometime" is the kind of sentence that exists only in a future. The future it implied was a future in which Cassia Voren was no longer my superior, in which there was somewhere an apartment, a car, a room neither of us had yet seen, where she would play me a recording she had been listening to for 15 years. It was a sentence about a place we did not yet have access to, but which had just been named. "Okay," I said. She looked at me. "I would like that," I said. We sat on the couch in the cream and beige hotel suite for a long time after that. We talked about other things. Small things. Things that did not feel like a job interview or an accounting. She told me about a sister in Vermont who she saw twice a year and called every Sunday. I told her about my mother in New Mexico, who I called every other day. She told me she had been adopted at 6 and grown up in a house with 3 other children in a town in Pennsylvania. She told me she had wanted briefly to be a concert pianist and had decided at 19 that she did not love it the way the people who became concert pianists loved it. She told me these things the way you tell them to a person you want to know you, not as a sales pitch, as an offer. I gave her, in return, a version of myself I had not given to anyone at the firm. I told her about my father, who had died when I was 21. I told her that I had moved to this city alone and spent the first 6 weeks taking myself to museums on Saturday mornings because I had not yet figured out how to make friends as an adult. She listened the way she did everything, with her whole attention. It was 1:15 in the morning when I looked at the clock. "I should go," I said. "Okay." She did not protest. She did not ask me to stay. She stood when I stood. She walked me to the door. She opened it. In the doorway I turned. She was standing close. Not as close as the elevator. Close in a different way. I said, "You will call Annette in the morning." "I will. Send me a message after you do." "I will." "And then," I said, "after the review and the recusal and whatever else has to happen, after all of it, I would like to know what kind of pour you drink." A small thing moved across her face. "Yunnan," she said. "Aged. I will remember that." "I will see you," she said, "when I am no longer your superior." "Okay." I almost touched her. My hand came up about 2 inches. She saw it. She did not move toward it. She did not move away. I dropped my hand. She nodded. Once. She understood the decision. "Good night, Cassia." "Good night, Mira." I walked down the hallway. I did not look back. I rode the elevator to 18. I went to my room. I locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. At 2:10 in the morning, I texted Devi. I am in my own bed and I would like to go to sleep, but I cannot. Devi wrote back immediately. Are you safe and are you okay? I am safe, I wrote. I am okay in a complicated way. Nothing happened. The conversation happened. She is going to disclose tomorrow morning. A long pause. Devi wrote, Good for her. Good for her, I agreed. Sleep, Devi wrote. We will talk tomorrow. I slept. I slept badly. I slept anyway. At 9 the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was from Cassia. It said, Done. CV. At 9:12, there was a calendar invite for an all-hands of marketing analytics at 10:30. The invite came from Annette Liu's office. The subject line read, Organizational Update. At 10:30, I sat in the conference room with the rest of the analytics team. Imani was at the front of the room. Annette was beside her in a navy suit, with the institutional calm of a senior HR officer who had handled many such situations and who would handle this one with the same dispatch. Annette spoke for 4 minutes. She announced that VP Vorin had requested a recusal from oversight of marketing analytics, effective immediately, citing an undisclosed conflict that VP Vorin herself had brought forward and was now addressing through internal review. She announced that Daria Holm would assume direct oversight of marketing analytics effective immediately. She did not name me. There was no professional reason to name me. Devi did not look at me. Imani did not look at me. Daria stood up, walked to the front of the room, and gave a brief, gracious set of remarks about looking forward to working with the team. She said the words, VP Vorin has built an exceptional analytics function and I will honor that work. She meant it. Daria was a serious person. The meeting ended at 11. I went to my desk. I sat down. I did not open my laptop for 40 seconds. Then I opened my laptop and got back to work. Because the work was real, and the Halcyon engagement was real, and the model was mine, and there was nothing else in that moment that I could productively do about any of it. The next 2 weeks at the firm were the strangest 2 weeks of my career. Cassia was in the building. I knew she was in the building because I saw Inez in the lobby cafe, and Inez said good morning to me in a tone that confirmed that Cassia was upstairs in her office. But Cassia was not at any of the meetings I was at. Cassia was not in the elevator at 7:15. Cassia did not send me messages. Cassia did not appear unexpectedly at a working group or pass me in a hallway with a small, unreadable nod. She had done exactly what she had said she would do. She had stepped out of the chain. The absence of her was the most visible accounting of the relationship between us that there had ever been. I noticed the absence the way you notice a piece of furniture that has been moved out of a room you sit in every day. The room was the same room. The furniture was not where it had been. I worked. I worked harder than I had worked in 3 months. The Halcyon model went into its final form. The presentation to Halcyon's executive team happened on a Thursday and was, by the metric of the senior consulting team, a complete success. Daria sent a brief note to Imani that mentioned my work specifically by name. Imani forwarded the note to me with the subject line, For your file. Lane Whitcomb wrapped up her engagement and went back to Chicago. On her last day, she stopped by my desk to say goodbye professionally and warmly, and did not extend any invitations beyond the boundary of work. I was grateful for the grace of it. Devi began to ask me, with increasing concern, whether I had heard from Cassia. I had not. I am giving her time, I said. She is giving me time. It is the agreement. You have an agreement, Devi said. We have an unspoken agreement. That is the worst kind of agreement. It is the only one we could have, I said. Devi did not press. 3 weeks after the disclosure, Daria called me into her office. She told me that based on my work on the Halcyon engagement and on a review of my performance over the prior 3 months, she was promoting me to senior analyst, effective immediately. She said the promotion had been Imani's recommendation and had been seconded by Annette Liu's office. She said that she wanted me to know it was a promotion on the merits and that she had reviewed the entire promotion package herself. She did not mention Cassia. There was no professional reason to mention Cassia. I thanked her. I went back to my desk. I sent a message to my mother. I sent a message to Devi. I did not send a message to Cassia. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about the difference between what Cassia had done for me operationally over the past 3 months and what she had now stepped out of doing. The promotion had come through a chain that did not include her. Daria had run it. Imani had recommended it. Annetta had cleared it. Cassia's name was nowhere on the package. It was the cleanest professional moment of my year. I understood why she had insisted on the recusal. She had wanted exactly this. She had wanted there to be no doubt, including, especially in my own mind, that what I had earned was what I had earned. I started writing her a message. I deleted it. I wrote it again. I deleted it. Then I wrote, I was promoted today. Senior analyst. The package went through Daria. I sent it. She wrote back within 90 seconds. CV. Congratulations. That was all. I did not write again. She did not write again. We left it there. 6 weeks after the disclosure, Annette Liu's office published the results of the internal review. The review had concluded that VP Vorin had appropriately disclosed a conflict and had appropriately recused. The formal reprimand had been placed in her file. She had been asked to take an interim role for a period of 6 months in a different division, specifically a transition management role, helping to integrate a recently acquired boutique firm into the company's broader strategic operations. The role was a real one. It was also, transparently, a distance role. She would not have authority over anyone in marketing analytics. That evening, I sat in my apartment and decided I had given it enough time. I wrote, I would like to know what kind of puer you drink. I would also like you to play me the Brahms. I sent it. 2 minutes later, she wrote, When? I wrote, Saturday. Anytime you want. She wrote, 3. My apartment. I will send the address. She sent the address. I sat on my couch holding my phone for a long time. That Saturday at 3, I rang the bell of an apartment in a building near the park, on a street I had never walked down, on a floor I had never been to. The hallway was carpeted in the kind of carpet that absorbed sound. The door was a heavy wood door with a brass knocker that looked like it had been there for 50 years. She opened the door. She was in dark jeans and a gray sweater, hair down, no watch. The kitchen behind her smelled like tea. The apartment behind the kitchen was full of books and a piano and a long couch and a window that looked out toward the park. And it was, immediately, the most Cassia Vorin-shaped space I had ever been in. Come in, she said. I came in. She made the tea. Aged Yunnan pu'er in a small clay pot. She poured it into 2 small cups. She handed me one. Her fingers brushed mine for less than a second. She sat across from me at a small wooden table near the window. We did not talk about the firm. We talked about the apartment, the books, the building. We talked about the piano. She told me she had inherited the piano from her adoptive mother, who had died 4 years ago. She told me she played most evenings for half an hour. She told me she did not play for anyone, usually, except the sister in Vermont over video call once a month. After the tea, she went to the piano. She played the Brahms. The piece was 8 minutes long. It was the saddest, most patient piece of music I had ever heard played in a private room by a person who was playing it for me specifically. Her hands moved across the keys with the same precision with which she did everything, but the precision was, in this room, in service of tenderness rather than control. The piece ended on a quiet, unresolved chord that hung in the air for several seconds before dissolving into the silence of the apartment. She turned on the bench. I had crossed the room without realizing I was crossing it. I stopped at the piano. She stood up. We were standing very close, in the late afternoon light, with the unresolved chord still hanging in the air somewhere in the structure of the room. "I am not your superior," she said quietly. "I know. I am not in any chain that touches your career. I know. I am asking," she said, "because I want to ask, and because I want you to be able to say yes or no without anything being at stake except the question." "I want you to ask," I said. "May I?" "Yes." She lifted her hand. She touched my face with her fingertips, slowly, the way she did everything, as if every motion were a decision she was responsible for. She kissed me. It was patient. It was earned. It was the cumulative undoing of 5 months of restraint in one careful pressure, quiet and steady and absolutely sure of itself. When she pulled back, her thumb traced once along my jaw and stopped, as if she were marking the place she had just been. She rested her forehead against mine. "I have wanted to do that," she said, "since the second week of October." "I have wanted you to," I said, "since the third morning in the lobby." She breathed out. I let my hand rest against the front of her sweater, just over her heart. Her heart was doing something I had not expected from Cassia Voren. It was running fast. Faster than mine. "I am going to take this slowly," she said. "Good. I am not going to take it slowly because I want to take it slowly. I know. I am going to take it slowly because you deserve to be approached carefully by someone who has already cost you something whether you knew it or not. I know. But," she said, "I want you to know that what I am holding back is not small." "I know," I said. We did not do anything else that afternoon. We sat on the long couch with the late light moving across the room, and we talked. And at 6 she made me a plate of cheese and bread, because we had both forgotten about lunch. And at 8 I left and walked the 11 blocks home through the soft spring evening because I did not want to be on a train. I wanted to be moving in my own body through the city that had just become a different city. The summer that followed was the most careful summer of my life. We saw each other on weekends. She did not invite me to events at the firm. I did not show up at her apartment unannounced. We took walks in the park. We had dinners in restaurants where no one from the firm went. She played the piano for me 3 more times. What we were building patiently, with the same care she brought to everything else. By the end of the summer, what had been a careful question in the spring was simply a fact, the way certain things become facts when nobody has been in a hurry to label them, and everybody has been honest about them along the way. In August, she took me to Vermont. We stayed with her sister for a long weekend. Her sister hugged her at the door for several seconds, then turned to me and said, "So you are the analyst. I have heard about you for almost a year." The hug she gave me was the hug of a person who had been waiting to meet me. In the airport on the way home, sitting at the gate with 2 bad coffees, Cassia said, "I want to tell you something." "Okay, I have been thinking about what comes next. My interim role ends in October. There is a question of where I land after." "Okay, there is an option to take a role at our New York office. It would be a lateral. It would be a clean exit from the structure here. There would be no further institutional question about us. You would move to New York. I would. You would do that." "I would do that," she said, "if you and I have both decided that this is the thing it now appears to be. I am not asking you to decide today. I am telling you that I am thinking about it because the thinking is informing my decisions, and I do not want to make those decisions silently the way I made other decisions silently for too long." I looked at her over the rim of the bad coffee. "I have decided what it is," I said. "Okay, I am still figuring out the shape of the rest of my life around that decision." "Okay, but I want you to know I have decided." "Okay," she said, and reached across the small airport table to take my hand, and the boarding announcement came on, And we stood up still holding hands and walked to the gate. And for the first time in 9 months of knowing each other, we were a thing visible from the outside, and neither of us flinched. In October, she announced her transfer to the New York office. The announcement was professional and unremarkable. She gave the standard speech about new opportunities and continued partnership with the Home Office. Annette Liu sent a brief note thanking her for her contributions. The firm threw a small farewell at a restaurant near the office. I attended as a senior analyst on the marketing analytics team. I sat at a table with Imani and Devi and 3 other colleagues. At the end of the dinner, Cassia made brief remarks. She thanked the partners. She thanked her team. She thanked, by name, several people whose work had mattered to her over 8 years. She did not name me. There was no professional reason to name me. After the speeches, she walked through the room shaking hands. When she got to my table, she stopped, said hello to Imani by name, said hello to Devi by name, looked at me last. Senior Analyst Solano, she said. VP Voren, I said. She said, have a good night, I said. You too. The corner of her mouth moved. 1 millimeter. I had been cataloging millimeters for a year. She moved on. In the cab on the way home, I sat with Devi and Imani. Devi looked at me sideways. You did very well in there, Devi said. I have had practice, I said. Imani, who had said almost nothing all evening, looked at me with the same long professional expression she had used the first time she had asked me about Cassia 8 months earlier. When are you joining her in New York? Imani asked. I had not, I said carefully, formally decided. You have informally decided. I have informally decided. Imani nodded. When you are ready to formalize, she said, come talk to me. I have several contacts in our New York analytics function. I will make sure your landing is a real one, and not a favor. I felt my eyes prick. Thank you, I said. Imani patted my hand once. Do not thank me, she said. You earned every one of those contacts. I am simply going to spend them on you, which is what they are for. I moved to New York in February. 1 year, almost to the day, after I had said see you tomorrow to a vice president in a conference room doorway, and meant nothing by it at all. The apartment I moved into was a sublet 6 blocks from Cassia's new place. We had decided, mutually, that we would not move in together yet. We had decided that the months in New York would be the months in which we built the version of the relationship that lived in the daylight, in our own city, in the open. We had time. We were not in a hurry. On the first Saturday in March, we walked through Central Park together in the kind of cold, bright light that comes after a snow. Cassia was in a long charcoal coat and the Cartier on her right wrist, the only thing she wore in every life she had with me. We stopped at a small bridge and stood for a while looking at the lake. She said, I have been thinking about something. Okay, when you said see you tomorrow that night in the conference room, did you have any idea? None, I said. I was tired. I was leaving. I said it to a person I respected. She nodded. I have been wondering, she said, whether the entire shape of my next 20 years was set by something you said without thinking. I looked at her in the cold, bright light, with the snow on the railing of the bridge and the lake gray below us, and her hair tucked into the collar of the long charcoal coat. I do not think it was set by what I said, I said. I think it was set by the fact that you waited in the lobby the next morning. That was you, not me. She looked at me. I would, she said, wait in a lobby for you every morning for the rest of my life. I know, I said. That has never been the question. She took my hand. We walked the rest of the way through the park in the cold, bright light, and I understood that some seasons of waiting are simply the structure that the rest of a life is built on top of, and that the lobby at 7:15 in a building 2,000 miles from where I was now standing had been the structure of mine. She had waited. I had walked in. The rest of it had taken its time the way the rest of it should have. That had been enough. That was actually exactly enough.